There is a detail in ASAP Rocky's recent comments that may be more revealing than any court filing, police report, or celebrity sighting. When speaking about the shooting that allegedly targeted the home he shares with Rihanna and their children, Rocky did not focus on property damage. He did not focus on headlines. Instead, he spoke about something far less visible. He said, "The incident took away a lot of peace and happiness." That statement changes the way this entire story can be understood, because when most people hear about a major celebrity incident, attention immediately gravitates toward the event itself. The questions become obvious. What happened? Who was involved? What charges were filed? What comes next? But in this case, the most significant part of the story may not be the alleged attack. It may be what happened afterward. According to verified reports, a shooting occurred in March 2026 at the residence associated with Rihanna and ASAP Rocky. Authorities arrested a suspect identified as Ivana Lizette Ortiz. Prosecutors filed multiple felony charges, including attempted murder and firearm-related offenses. Those are the confirmed facts. What remains less measurable is the impact of such an event on the people who were allegedly inside the home at the time. Reports indicated that Rihanna, Rocky, and their children were present when the shooting occurred. For most families, the home represents a boundary between the outside world and private life. For celebrities, that boundary is already thinner than it is for everyone else. Their movements are documented. Their relationships become public conversation. Their personal milestones become entertainment news. Yet even with that reality, home is still supposed to be home. That is why Rocky's description of losing peace resonates beyond celebrity culture. It speaks to a basic human experience. The feeling that a place once associated with comfort suddenly becomes connected to fear. And that is where the story becomes much larger than a crime report. In the months following the incident, public appearances by Rihanna and Rocky attracted significant attention. Entertainment coverage highlighted sightings, outings, and social events. On the surface, those moments appeared to represent a return to normal life. The phrase "return to normal" is often misleading. Normality is not something people simply switch back on after a traumatic event. It is something they attempt to rebuild. That distinction matters. When photographs emerge showing public appearances, what audiences usually see is a single moment, a smile, a conversation, a walk through a crowd, an evening out. What they do not see are the invisible consequences that may exist behind those images. That reality became particularly relevant after Rocky publicly discussed the shooting's effect on his sense of peace and happiness. His comments shifted the conversation away from pure incident reporting and towards something more personal: recovery. Recovery is rarely dramatic. It does not usually arrive with a clear beginning and end. Instead, it often appears through ordinary actions: showing up somewhere, attending an event, spending time with family, participating in public life again, spending time with family life again, doing things that once felt routine. From that perspective, the public appearances that followed the shooting can be interpreted not simply as celebrity sightings, but as evidence of people attempting to continue living their lives while processing something frightening. The legal case itself remains active. Authorities have filed charges. The defendant has pleaded not guilty. Questions surrounding motive remain unresolved. Public reporting has not established a definitive explanation for why the residence was allegedly targeted. Authorities have not publicly confirmed whether Rihanna herself was the intended target. They have not publicly established whether additional individuals were involved. Those unanswered questions are important because they help define the limits of what is actually known. In celebrity coverage, uncertainty often becomes filled with assumptions. Rumors emerge, social media theories spread, narratives develop before evidence becomes available. Yet the verified information remains relatively straightforward. A shooting allegedly occurred. A suspect was arrested. Charges were filed. Rocky later described significant emotional consequences. Everything beyond those established facts requires caution. And perhaps that caution becomes even more important when considering the broader context surrounding both Rihanna and ASAP Rocky. Neither is unfamiliar with public scrutiny connected to violence-related stories. Rocky's own legal history became a major news topic in recent years. In November 2021, a confrontation involving former associate ASAP Rocky led to allegations that eventually resulted in felony assault charges against Rocky. He denied wrongdoing. The case proceeded through the legal system. Rihanna attended portions of the trial. In February 2025, a jury acquitted Rocky on all counts. The acquittal ended one legal battle, but it also demonstrated how closely the couple's lives had become linked to public discussions involving conflict, allegations, and courtroom proceedings. That history adds another layer to the current story. Not because the cases are connected. There is no verified evidence that they are, but because public perception often blends separate events into a single narrative. People remember headlines. They remember themes. And once a public figure becomes associated with a particular type of story, future events are often viewed through that lens. Rihanna's experience illustrates that phenomenon perhaps more clearly than almost anyone in entertainment. More than a decade after the highly publicized 2009 assault case involving Chris Brown, references to that event continue to appear in news coverage under circumstances that are sometimes only loosely connected. A recent legal headline involving Chris Brown and a separate dog bite lawsuit drew attention because of a court-related issue concerning whether Rihanna's assault case could be mentioned during proceedings. The existence of that headline serves as a reminder of something significant about public memory. They remain attached to a person's public identity. That does not mean they define the individual, but it does mean they continue to reappear. For Rihanna, this creates a unique dynamic. She is one of the most successful entertainers in the world. She is a business leader, a performer, a mother, yet stories involving violence from different periods of her life continue to intersect with contemporary coverage. Again, this is not because the events are connected factually. They are not. Rather, they become connected through the way media ecosystems operate. One headline leads audiences to remember another. One news cycle activates memories from previous news cycles. The result is a public narrative in which past and present sometimes appear side by side. That context helps explain why the shooting story generated such strong reactions. Many observers were not simply responding to a single alleged criminal act. They were responding to a larger pattern of vulnerability that seemed to emerge across years of public coverage. A global superstar, a high-profile family, a home allegedly targeted by gunfire, children reportedly inside, a father describing lost peace. Those details naturally triggered sympathy and concern. Public discussion frequently returned to the same question. If people with immense resources, security, and visibility can experience something like this, it is a difficult question because celebrity culture often creates an illusion of protection. The assumption is that fame and wealth can eliminate risk. Reality is more complicated. Fame can provide security teams, gated communities, and protective measures. It can also create visibility, obsession, and exposure. The same attention that drives careers can sometimes introduce new vulnerabilities. That broader conversation became part of the reaction surrounding this case. Not because authorities framed it that way, not because Rocky framed it that way, but because audiences naturally began discussing the challenges associated with living publicly while attempting to preserve private family life. In that sense, the shooting story intersects with a much larger cultural conversation. How much privacy is actually possible? Because among all the developments connected to this story, his description of losing peace and happiness may be the most revealing. Not because it answers legal questions, not because it resolves uncertainties, but because it explains why the story matters. The shooting investigation will continue through the justice system. Evidence will be examined, arguments will be presented, facts may emerge that are not currently public. Some questions may eventually receive answers, others may not. But regardless of what happens next legally, Rocky's statement provides insight into the human dimension behind the headlines. When people hear the phrase celebrity news, they often imagine glamour, wealth, and spectacle. Yet the experiences described here are strikingly ordinary in one respect. Fear is ordinary. Concern for family is ordinary. The desire to feel safe at home is ordinary. The effort to regain a sense of normal life after a frightening event is ordinary. Those emotions exist regardless of fame, not because it involves two internationally known figures, not because it generated dramatic headlines, but because beneath the celebrity status sits a situation that many people can understand instinctively: the loss of peace, the search for stability, the challenge of moving forward while uncertainty remains. At this stage, important questions are still unanswered. The full circumstances behind the alleged attack remain subject to ongoing legal proceedings. The long-term emotional impact on the family is not publicly known, and it would be inappropriate to speculate beyond the verified record. What can be said with confidence is that the story has evolved beyond the initial incident itself. It is now also a story about aftermath, about resilience, about the invisible consequences that exist long after a headline begins to fade. The public may see appearances, photographs, and brief moments captured by cameras, but the most meaningful detail in the entire narrative may still be the simplest one: a father describing what he felt was taken away. Not fame, not success, not opportunity, peace, and in many ways, understanding that loss is the key to understanding the story.